Well, good morning, everyone, and good afternoon if you're joining us from the East Coast. Welcome to our webinar today. Our webinar title is Connecting, Engaging, and Increasing Retention Through the Pedagogy of Real Talk. We have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Jacob A. Price, and he is from Amarillo College. And I'm going to introduce him in just a second, but I wanted to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. As soon as the recording becomes available, I will send it out to you. We also have a short 7-question survey that will pop up after the webinar. We would love it if you will complete that on our behalf. And if you have any questions, please feel free to either put that in the chat, or you can also use the Q&A feature. I will be monitoring that throughout the webinar. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is Teresa Tyus, and I'm an institutional support consultant here at Trellis Company. So welcome, come on in, have a seat, and we'll get started here in a few minutes. And as you are coming in, I am going to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. We have Dr. Jacob Price. Dr. Price is an associate professor in biology sciences at Amarillo College. He began his education at Amarillo College and received his bachelor's and master's degree at West Texas A&M and a doctorate of philosophy at Texas Tech University. Dr. Price began teaching at Amarillo College in 2009, and he has served as an instructor and curriculum specialist, creating certificate and transfer courses in horticulture and biotechnology. He now focuses on integrating teaching pedagogies into the classroom to increase student engagement and long-term retention. He also participates as a guest speaker on the Pedagogy of Real Talk, designed to build strong relationships in the classroom. As a teacher, Dr. Price always strives to leave his students better than he found them, not only in their education, but also in their lives. Thank you so much, Dr. Price, for coming here and presenting on this very important topic today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm so excited to be here and have the chance to talk to you guys about something that is so special to me, that changed the way I teach, but also changed the way I view teaching, the way I view my students, and probably most important, it changed the way I look at the things that I can do for my students to help them to be successful. So to get started here, let's see. Okay, cool. So a little presentation outline. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Amarillo College, and then I want to talk to you about the sense of student belonging. I'll talk a little about how students view us and how I got my start in teaching, as well as a little bit of my start in college as well, and how we can build belonging through the pedagogy of real talk, which is based on stories and talking with students. I'll tell you a little bit about the Faculty Institute, that is where I learned to do the pedagogy of real talk, and I'll talk about its effects on me and my students. As well as being able to change your classroom and increase engagement using alternative lessons. And then I'll end with the effects of the pedagogy on our teachers and instructors, because I feel that that's just as important as its effects on students as well. So to get started, let me tell you about Amarillo College. So we are found right, if you don't know where it is, we're found right in the top of the middle of the Texas Panhandle. We're a community college here, and when we look at our student demographics, about half of our students, a little more than that, are first-generation students. We have a very high population of female students in our student body. About half our students are part-time, and then we have a large proportion of minority students. We are a Hispanic-serving institution. And then a large portion of our students come into Amarillo College through what's called the Thrive Scholarship. Now, what that is a student that attends an Amarillo independent school, when they leave high school, as long as they have a certain GPA, they can move right into Amarillo College, and we'll pay for their classes, we'll pay for their books, all the way through their time with us. Now, as we look at this, these statistics, of course, that's important for like legislation. But as teachers and as instructors, we know what these statistics really mean. We know that our first generation students don't have the family support that they need to truly be successful. And their family doesn't understand why they can't do all the things that they have been doing. They can't go to the store. They're not able to watch their brother and sister. They can't take care of grandparents as well as they used to, clean around the house. And sadly, our students do not know how to advocate for themselves to make sure that they get the time to be successful. We know that the majority of our female students are single mothers and they have 2+ kiddos and they're working 2+ jobs and just trying to hold things together. And that's why they're part-time at school. We know that for our minority students, a large proportion of them, English is not their first language. So if you can imagine talking to your instructor and asking them to slow down, not because the concepts are tough or it's hard to get, but because you don't understand what they're saying. That's a huge roadblock and an embarrassing one too. And then about our Thrive Scholarship, I'm not sure for you guys, but when my students come into class straight out of high school, they've got a good basis, but they don't have the tools that are needed to continue their education. They don't know how to study. They don't know how to use their books. They don't know how to take notes. They don't know how to create a study schedule to make sure they can organize everything and get the time in that they need. And all of those roadblocks, they don't even count all the undercover stuff: homelessness, hunger, mental health, domestic violence, all of those roadblocks and needs that must be met before our students can become successful. So I want to move in and talk a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we all know about this, that there's physiological needs and safety needs and belonging and love needs, as well as esteem and self-actualization, all the things that need to be fulfilled starting at the bottom for our students to truly be successful. But for us in education, I propose that we change this, that we take that belonging and that love needs and we put that at the bottom of the triangle. Because with our relationship, we never get a chance to solve those physiological needs, the safety needs, because we hardly ever find out about them until it's too late. And I know that we have all experienced this. You don't find out until after the middle of the semester that the reason Sally has not been coming to class, and when she does, she falls asleep, is because her boyfriend threw her out of her house. She doesn't have any family, and she's been sleeping in her car for 2 weeks. And by that time, us being able to get in and help her just be successful in class has passed. So we have to be able to find out about those needs early, when class starts in the very beginning, so we can get those roadblocks out of the way and make sure that they are successful. And we have a lot of these things. I know that here at Amarillo College, we have resources for them. We have an ARC. And through the ARC, we have a food pantry. We've got a clothing closet. We've got mental health services. We've got medical services, all kinds of things that students need to be successful in their college career. Now, the problem is that without that sense of belonging at the bottom, and what is this belonging? So for academia and students, a belonging is an individual student's conceptualization of connectedness, how connected they are to not only their friends, but their college that they're at. So we have social interactions, meeting at the cafe, forming study groups, seeing each other after class, But not only that, with their peers, what our institutions can give them. So, what support services do we have with clothing and food and housing and so forth? But that's all really kind of external, right? We also need to have the internal senses of belonging, that inviting classroom that makes students feel comfortable when they come in, safe, a comfortable area to learn. And the way we create that is by interactions with their instructor, okay? And we're the ones that really help facilitate that because we're the ones that are with them. So to really kind of look at that, we need to understand what happens when students don't have a good sense of belonging. So research has found that students that don't have a good sense of belonging are less likely to seek out those services when they need them. And even more importantly, they're less likely to reach out to their instructors. So in order to create that comfort, that sense of belonging as faculty, we have to create a genuine interest in each student. We have to form that relationship with each one. And the way we do that is through a general pedagogy of caring, something that shows students that we actually do care. And that way we can build those relationships and we can find out that they're having trouble early. But as we know, there's already a block, right? There's already what in the Pedagogy of Real Talk we call a terministic screen. That's a feeling that the students have about us before they ever even enter the classroom. And we know we've seen that before, right? On the first day of class, when the students start coming in, you're at your desk, you're working, and what do you hear? That's my best cricket impersonation. I know it's not super, so I'll practice it and we'll come back. But that's what you hear because they're scared. They don't want to look like they don't know what's going on. They don't want to look dumb. They don't want to be the only one in the class who doesn't know what's going on. And they're afraid to come and talk to us because of the way they see us. And I'll tell you how they see us. They don't see us as a real person. They think that we have never failed. They think that we've never struggled, that we've never stayed up until 4 o'clock in the morning drinking coffee and studying just so we hope we can pass that exam. And they've been told from the beginning of high school, how we view them. They've been told, don't ask for help. It's you. This is your college education. It's sink or swim. You have to do it on your own. So I like to nip that right in the bud as soon as we start class. I want to show them that I am not perfect. So what I do is when they're all shuffling in right about the time the class is going to start, we always have to wait for people anyways. They can't find the classroom, so they shuffle in. So I always tell them, oh man, guys, I'm so sorry. I do not have all my stuff together. You guys go ahead and chat with each other. I still got to get some things going, meet each other, and then we'll start. We're going to have stragglers come in anyways. Do you know why I do that? There's a super important reason. Research has found that students that meet other students, that have a buddy in class, are more likely to come to class. So I want to challenge you. I want you to think about the possibilities that maybe that person that they're looking forward to seeing, why can't that be us? Why can't they be looking forward to seeing us when they come to class and comfortable enough to ask for help when they need it? And I was really curious about this when I first got into this whole idea of communicating with students and being able to get them to the services that they need. So I wanted to do a survey. And what I did was I looked at retention and I looked at our information institutional research, and I gathered research on retention from fall to spring. I didn't really want to look at from spring to fall because we have students that graduate, they transfer off. I wanted to see true retention. Did we keep them from semester to semester? And what I found when I compared students that use the ARC services with their retention compared to the overall retention of our student body, I found that those that use the ARC were significantly greater than the overall retention of the classroom. And for those of the class, the college as a whole, and for those of you that are statistics minded, I did analyze this with the student T, used alpha 0.05, and I did find a probability value of 0.09, showing that those services really do make a difference in retention for our students. And then I wanted to find out how those students found out about the ARC. So one of my colleagues, a super nice guy, his name is Mr. Mario Morales. He's a biology faculty here at Amarillo College, and he's just a spectacular teacher. We worked together to design a survey that we sent out to the entire student body. We got about 249 responses, which is pretty usual. That's about what we usually get on this type of stuff. And what we found was that 50% of the students that answered the survey found out about our ARC, our resource center, through either Amarillo College staff or from their instructor. And this is wild because just like many of you, I'm sure, right at the beginning of the semester, we have a survey for them about needs. It comes up on their Blackboard, and they can go in and learn all about the services and go ahead and put in what they need. Only 15% of our students actually learned about the ARC and their services by using that survey. So that points out how important it is that we as staff and instructors make sure that our students are comfortable enough to come and tell us when they don't have any food, when they don't have clothes, when they don't have housing, when they're having mental health problems. And that way we can take care of those needs that are above that level on the triangle. So let me tell you a little bit about my story and why this idea of building bonds with students is so important to me. And I'll start with me being a student and then lead into my teaching. So when I started at Amarillo College, I got my start here, and I always knew I was going to come back and teach. When I started, I was well below the poverty line, and it's self-imposed. I had a pretty bad drug habit when I first started coming to school here. And I remember making those choices. I lived in a crack house. We didn't have any money. And I remember choosing between, so do I get some gas or to give myself something to eat so I can go to school? And fortunately, during much of my school year, I worked in restaurants, so I could, save my meal and take it home and feed other people. But I knew that school was really important to me, and I wanted to make it and be good. And to be honest, if it wasn't for some really special instructors here at Amarillo College, that for whatever reason, I don't know if it was my interest in the subject or if it was my floppy hat and long hair, they took an interest in me. And they taught me and they helped me, gave me a job in the lab mixing up microbiology media so that I could come to school and still have a place to live. They taught me things about biotechnology, which eventually ended with me being in research. So I was a researcher in plant pathology for about 11 years before I came to Amarillo College, because I knew I was going to end up here. And when I did, coming right out of research, I had no formal teaching training. I just knew that I loved to teach and I loved to be with students. And that's what I did. I came in and I just taught, just lectured. And I reaped the rewards for that. Boring lectures, unengaged students, This picture down here in the bottom, this is my favorite picture because looking at it, that could very well be one of my students. If it wasn't for the desks, I would think it was because that teacher, he looks just like me. And this is a public domain picture. I think I even have a shirt like that. Now, after this, really looking at things and trying to do my best, I had no idea what to do. But fortunately, during my time here, our president, our then president at the time, Dr. Lowry Hart, he brought in a guy named Dr. Paul Hernandez as a keynote speaker at one of our retreat weeks to get ready for the semester. And he told us all about this amazing pedagogy called the Pedagogy of Real Talk. And what it is it's a two-tiered pedagogy. The first part is what's called the Real Talks. This is where we build relationships with students, and we do it through stories. In the Pedagogy of Real Talk, we call those common themes, things that we have in common with our students, a lot from when we were in school, because we faced very similar things that they faced in school. And then once you use the Real Talks to build that relationship, then you get to use that engagement with alternative lessons to increase the engagement between you, your students, and the material. So when I first heard about this and I started learning about it and realizing that it was through stories, I thought immediately, I was like, oh man, I got this. That's no problem at all. I tell stories all the time. I've got stories that kind of go along with the material. I've got stories that I use to just break up the monotony. Sometimes those stories are even funny, or at least I think they are. But then I got to take part in the Faculty Institute. And during the Faculty Institute, where I got to work with Dr. Paul Hernandez, I learned how to use my stories for very particular purposes. I learned how to use them to build connections and relationships with my students. I learned how to use them to teach them very special things to help them in their education, to help further their education. Suddenly, my stories weren't just something to pass time or break a monotony. They were a tool that I can use. So that Faculty Institute made a dramatic effect on my teaching. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about that Faculty Institute and about this type of professional development. Now, it's different from your regular everyday. It's not a one-off training where you spend thousands of dollars to have somebody come in, they tell you about this amazing thing that they do, they get you all hyped up, and then boom, they're gone. You go back to your classroom and either A, you're too busy in the first place to try and incorporate this new pedagogy into your classroom, or you try it one time, it flops, and then you never touch it again. The Faculty Institute is a cohort-based pedagogy where you meet multiple times. This is not just a one-time try and that's it. You meet multiple times with faculty from different areas in your institution. So you get to create things and try them and see if they work, and then come back and discuss with your colleagues what worked and what didn't, and get suggestions, refine your techniques so you can go back in the classroom and try it again. And that's where this Faculty Institute is different and how it makes professional development more applicable in your classrooms. So let me tell you a little bit about the Faculty Institute and how it works. So it's a 3-year commitment so that we can work to refine and change and do as many lessons as you want to, as many real talks as you want to. There's a faculty stipend that goes along with this, of course. In the beginning, there's a 1-week training where I come and I teach you how to use your stories. I teach you how to pinpoint areas, tweak things, create alternative lessons, introduce those into the classroom. We do that right at the end of the summer. And then you go in, you start working on things, but then you come back throughout the year with monthly meetings so that you can check out things you've tried, what you're planning on, get ideas, see your comrades from different disciplines within your institution. You get to have a faculty retreat in August and January where we come and get together in more of a, or you do with your teaching and learning with in a kind of a casual setting. So you can talk about things that you like, things you don't like, what you're planning, what you've already done. And probably the most important part of this Faculty Institute is I try to develop a faculty leader, somebody who is excited and works with this and wants to take it over and continue. I want to make sure that this pedagogy goes so it doesn't die when I leave. And that's so exciting. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be able to talk to you guys is because I am that faculty model here at Amarillo College. I teach new faculty, institution cohorts how to do the pedagogy of real talk. And that's what I want to set up for other institutions. And of course, all of this is designed to strengthen our teaching and learning to improve our student success. So to give you kind of a little bit of an idea about what I do, here's a few of my real talks that I do during the semester. Now, I don't have time to really go in and do a real talk for you. Hopefully, maybe I could do one for you in the future. Just contact me, let me know. But in the very beginning of the semester, right about the time where I tell the students, hey, you've got to study to pass this class, I talk about balance. Balance is my common theme, okay? Being able to balance school, work, and family. And to do so, I tell my students about myself. I talk about being in school. I tell them about my past drug habits. I tell them about struggling to find food because I found that those students are in my classroom. They are facing the same things that I had to face. And then I tell them how I figured it out. I tell them how I learned how to balance my work, family, school. I teach them how to make a study schedule. I talk to them about how to use their book, how to take notes, and they set up this study schedule so that they can learn by repetition. We do everything they do during the week. And then in that, they have where they go to, when they go to work, when they go to class, where they're going to break up their study sessions. And in there, mandatory, I make them put a time for family and friends or going to the gym, personal time, whatever, so that they don't just get stuck in that going to work, going to school, and they miss out on all those important things that I missed out on when I was going to school. Like I missed my son's first word. It was dad, but I wasn't there to see it. I missed out on him walking for the first time. You know how kiddos, they come and they get up on the couch and they do that little Spider-Man thing where like across. Well, my kiddo did that. And then he just turned around and he started walking off through the living room. And I realized that I was the only person that wasn't surprised. And I don't want my students missing out on that. So I teach them how to balance it. And that helps them be able to continue their schooling. About mid-semester, when everybody's tired and maybe they're not doing so well, I talk about struggle. And I tell them a story about how I was stuck at the lake on the side of a cliff and I didn't think I was going to make it. And I relate that back to being stuck in the middle of the semester and having to jump from rock to rock, like exam to exam, just hoping to make it to the end. And when I did, when I finally made it to the top and I crawled over, I talk about how good that felt to be through with that struggle. And I relate that back to their class, to being at the end of the class, the end of their degree, moving into the workplace and that success. And then at the end of the semester, I have a talk about failure and success. And this is more geared towards my students that didn't quite do as well as I had wanted them to. I talked to them about when I went to go do my preliminary exams for my dissertation and how I crashed and burned. It was terrible. And I tell them about that failure and how through that failure, I began to see my education differently. I started to learn, not just to learn, but to learn to use that material so that if I was ever caught in that situation again, I knew how to tell what I wanted and what I liked and be successful with my learning in class, because the last thing I want to see is a student fail and then me never see him again. And it works because I do. My students that don't do very well, they come back the next time, and I can tell immediately when they walk in the classroom, because they don't go to their desk and just sit down and be quiet. They come to mine and they talk to me. They're like, "Oh man, I'm so glad to see you again." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm so glad to see you too. We're going to have a great time. Meet me with me in my office. Let's go ahead and take care of those roadblocks right away. Make sure you have a successful semester." So it gives me the ability to keep those students and increasing their retention, even if they don't do well. So those are just a few of my real talks that I give during the semester. Now, I wanted to see if these real talks, the stuff I was implementing, I wanted to see if it actually made a difference to my students. So what I did was I set up some research, this with IRB approval and all this. I had a pre-survey and a post-survey and a focus group. Now, the pre-survey was set up to evaluate students on how they felt about their past classes and their connection with their instructors in 8-week classes. We have 8-week classes here at Amarillo College. And man, I'll tell you, if you can imagine how hard it is to form a relationship with a student in the 16-week class, you only imagine how hard it is to do it in an 8-week class. And I wanted to make sure that I was able to do that. So in my post-survey, that was all about my class, how they felt about the connection with me. And this was all done through institutional research. So the surveys were not sent from me. I didn't get the data until later, so students could feel comfortable with what they said. And then at the end of the semester, our administrative assistant came in and gave them a focus group where they asked them questions about, how they felt about the class, how they felt about me, new things they had learned, so forth and so on. And then that data didn't come to me until later, after the semester was over. Their names were replaced with pseudonyms, so I could kind of get a feel of the class and see how they were doing. And this is what I found. So looking at this graph here, I've got my pre-survey data in the red columns, and I've got my blue survey data as the post survey, or blue columns is my post survey. And first off, I was just really excited to see that about 81% of our students felt like they could make a connection with their instructors. And then in my post survey, I was really excited to see that I had moved those students that disagreed and strongly disagreed out of those categories. And 95.7% of my students felt like they could form a connection with me. And that helped in their success. And I wanted to know what it was about that. Why was that connection increased? What was it about me that allowed them to do that? So when I looked at those focus group comments, I went through, did some text mining, trying to find out common ideas that they had. And what I found was the majority of those comments showed that the students felt like I was approachable. And that the second highest was that I cared. And then I did have a student that said, that I was hard to focus on, which fair enough. I could roll with that. Sometimes I am a little hard to focus on, but these findings showed me that what I was doing in class was actually making a difference. They felt like they could come to me, and they did. Okay, and they did. And when you start doing this, they will come to you too. So you have to be ready. And this is something that I also put in my Faculty Institute to help make sure that you are ready to handle them. Because I have had students come to me with everything from abuse, from loss of loved ones, legal trouble, medical access, mental health is a big one. I take students to our mental health service every semester, and that's something that I learned. when they come to you, you cannot just send them off because they will not go. After class or when I can get them, I walk them over to our mental health resources. And as I do, I talk to them. I walk with them and I'm like, man, Sally, I am so sorry to hear about your dad. I know that that is a very tough thing to carry on your shoulders. Come with me. Let me get you a cup of coffee. I'm going to take you over to our mental health so I can find somebody who can help you. And really, that's super important for us because we care and we'll carry that. So I help my teachers. I help you realize that you can't carry that with you, that the best we can do is get them to those people who can help them. That way we don't have to carry that with us on our shoulders and we can be there to help our other students. And it's been the best. I think that's probably the most rewarding. Sorry, I get a little choked up sometimes. I can't actually make it through a Disney movie, so but it's really helped. And just to kind of let you see, I've got some quotes that I've collected from students just over the years. Some that really kind of stuck out to me that showed me what I was doing made a difference. One of my students told me, I just wanted to say thank you for truly caring about us. So I'm glad that got through, that I actually do care and not just there to shove information in their face. I don't usually talk about my problems, but your stories made me feel like I could. I thought that was very poignant because that's the whole idea behind the pedagogy of real talk. And I remember this one specifically. This was a young gentleman, and he had some troubles with health and could not afford to see a doctor. So very, very fortunately, I was able to work with our Amarillo College Foundation. We were able to help him get in to see a doctor. He ended up having to have surgery. And I've never had such a big hug. When he came back, I saw him later at school. He came up to me. I think he's a football player, so I think he almost crushed me. I thought I was going to die. But it was so nice to be able to help him and make sure. And I don't think I would have been able to do that if he wasn't comfortable enough to talk to me. And then last but not least, like even if I had a random question that was not related, he was so willing to be like, oh, yeah, I'll show you. I'll teach you. And that just speaks to, that comfort in the classroom. That's what we really need to get those students involved in their education. And once we have formed these bonds, once you form those bonds and those students feel comfortable with you, this is when the fun part really comes in. We get to take advantage of those teachable moments, right? And in doing so, this is where I incorporate the alternative lessons that increase engagement. And the way we do that is by using a hook, something that relates those students to the materials. It's something that they've seen before, that they've heard about, something that's important to the population as a whole, and that brings them into the material. And in my lessons, I'm very much a Socratic learner and teacher. So we have a cooperative dialogue. Like my class is just talking. We talk back and forth. It's very seldom me just kind of yammering at them. And we get to move away from learning just to learn and do well on a test to actually using information and seeing why it is significant to them and their lives. And it really changes the material. To give you kind of some examples of some things I've done, I've created these real world lessons like for the scientific method. To learn the scientific method in good science, we get to talk about bad science. And we talk about vaccines causing autism because everybody's heard that before. And that idea is all because of bad science. So we go in and we investigate that. We talk about the Wakefield study. We talk about the things that were wrong with it. And then we learn how we do good science. We learn the scientific method. We learn all about variables. We learn about data. I teach them how to see data and read data and understand if something is missing. So it really helps them to navigate the world, and it makes it real for them. For evolution, which sometimes can be a touchy concept, something that's a little touchy to cover in class. So to do this, I kind of make it light. We talk about that idea of, did we evolve from monkeys, which we didn't. We didn't evolve from monkeys. Us and monkeys evolved from something that was neither of us. So we get to talk about how we have cousins that are monkeys, and that makes evolution exciting and fun to learn about. For bacteria, we talk about life on Mars. That's a big thing. We're always searching for life on other planets. So we talk about, what if there was life? What would they need? How does that compare to living organisms here on Earth? I also use viruses for that too. We talk about how viruses are not considered to be alive, so we can learn about, characteristics of living things and stuff. For respiratory and cardiovascular, we talk about smoking, and we basically follow the smoke. We talk about the oral cavity and the mucosas when the smoke goes into the mouth. We talk about the trachea, the larynx, go down to the bronchioles, the bronchioles. We talk about COPD, heart disease, how the heart works, all that stuff. And it makes it interesting because everybody, if they haven't smoked, they know somebody who does. And then for DNA and cell replication, we talk about cancer, something that affects everybody. And a great way to do that is by looking at human papillomavirus, and the number one sexually transmitted disease, and how that actually changes a person's DNA and can result in cervical cancer. So I bring those students in, and they have something that they can talk about later with people. And I think that's what really drives the engagement, is being able to communicate about something that they're probably going to talk about later. And they come to me and they tell me, they were like, oh man, I got to talk to them about vaccines the other day, or I got to explain evolution to my grandma. And I love hearing that. It shows that we're really getting in and making a difference with that education. So with this, I also wanted to see, does this work? So along with that, oh, sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself. A little bit about my alternative designs, alternative lessons, and how I help you to create these. What I do is I use a backwards design, and we really focus on those individual concepts that you need to cover in class. Like for me, it's the ACGM. So I go in and look at those and discover what students need to have and how I'm going to get that across. And I do layering. It's hard to learn. I was very worried about long-term retention in 8-week classes. So I wanted to create very much this repetition, because repetition is learning. So I've learned how to layer concepts and go back. We learn one and then we learn the next, and we have to go back and find out how that's different and where it fits. And then we learn the next and we have to go back. And a good example of that for you guys is my lesson on chemistry. So for chemistry, I use disease mitigation, because I worked in pathology, and I always try to stick something about disease in my class. So we start off by watching a video. I usually use videos to get them excited into the stuff. That's my hook, but you could use anything. And that's really neat about the Pedagogy of Real Talk and the alternative lessons, that, man, you can totally customize these to do whatever you want. You could use a story, you could use a news article, you could use something that you saw at the school, anything to pull them in. I use videos because I like it. But we watch this video on how washing hands could save lives. And then we start talking about that. And I'm like, okay, so how does that work? How do you wash your hands? And they say, well, you get soap and you get water. And I'm like, okay, so how does soap work? And nobody really knows how soap works. So I'm like, all right, so if we wanted to make soap, how would we make soap? What do we need? And I have them look it up. So they learn to look up the things that they need. And they're like, well, okay, so they And they start to look, and they're like, oh, well, I need lye and oil. And I'm like, okay, cool. What is lye? So then they look that up. Oh, it's a base. And I'm like, okay, what is a base? And then in order to know a base, we got to learn chemistry. We got to learn about the atom. We got to learn about the parts of the atom. We got to learn about bonding and chemical bonds. We learn about pH. So we get to learn about bases and acids. We get to learn about hydrogen bonds dealing with water. We get to learn why we use water and soap together. What does that molecule look like? How does it work? And then how is water different from oil? Because we also got to use oil. And how is oil different from other macromolecules like sugars or proteins or nucleic acids, and why you can't use those to make soap? You have to use oil. And then once we learn oil and we learn about a soap molecule and how it grabs oil and water, then I can take that into the cell. That leads us right into the plasma membrane, because your cellular plasma membrane is made out of these little molecules called phospholipids. And a phospholipid acts just like soap. It works exactly the same way. And that's how your cell controls what comes in and what goes out. So it makes it very fluid for the students. And each time we're going back to talk about, why is that different? There's that repetition that helps cement those concepts to the class. So that's really cool and everything too. But does it work? Does that actually bring students in? Well, as part of that survey, okay. I got a little ahead of myself again. And then at the end, the really cool part, we get to make soap. So the students they get their bases, they get their oils, they mix it together, they make their soap. I got little smelly stuff that they get to put in there. And here's where I get tricky. I have them say, it has to cure. So I tell them your soap has to cure in the classroom. You can take it at the end of the semester. So they have to make it with me all the way through the semester. Then they get to take their little bar of soap home. And of course, here I am. If I don't get to have any fun, nobody gets to have any fun. So I get to have fun making soap with them. And it's super, super enjoyable. So to find out if this actually works, okay? Again, my post and pre-survey and post-survey, again, I was excited to see that in classes before mine, about 82, almost 83% of students felt like they were engaged with their material in their classes. And nobody said that they disagreed, which was kind of wild. But I was excited to see that I was able to move some of those students that were kind of in the neutral over to the strongly agree or agree. With 97% of my students surveyed felt like they were able to engage with the material. Oh, and I did want to mention, this is over 5 biology classes, a mixture of both majors and non-majors classes. So I do have a good survey population here. So this is nice. Yeah, so feelings of engagement, this is good. They engaged with the material. They felt like they were doing good. But does this really translate into grades? Probably the most important part when it comes to success and retention. So I also looked at that. What I did was I randomly selected some of my lessons to do as an alternative lesson, and some of my lessons to do as the old way, the old traditional, just lecture. And then I gave them a test over those sections. And what I found was when I analyzed them, there was a significant difference in student average grades on the presentations that I had with my alternative lessons rather than just my old traditional lecture style. And again, this was significant, almost to a complete letter grade. So I was super happy to see that and excited to know that those things that I was putting into the class, the work that I did on creating those alternative lessons, on formulating the repetition and getting those students involved, was actually paying off in the end. It was so exciting. And then just to kind of give you a student perspective here, I've got some comments that I got from those focus groups. One of the students said that I made it seem like there was no dumb questions. So that's awesome. They're in there, they're able to think about things, they can explore ideas and ask stuff that they may not have asked in the beginning. I had another student say that, biology is a difficult study, subject to learn so quickly. Yet I feel as though our instructor did the best he could at teaching and engaging students to get our brains thinking and working with students individually. So I'm glad that that came through. That it was easier to take in that material because they were engaged with it. And then last but not least, I had one student say that there were occasions where they zoned out, but they still felt engaged. So that's good. I mean, if you zone out and you still feel engaged with the material, I'll call that a win. I'm going to roll with that. So I was excited to see that as well. But that's really our students and their feelings on the class, their feelings on engagement. But to round this out, this is what the pedagogy did for me. It allowed me to take something that I love to do and do it even better than I was before. It totally changed my classroom. It's a wonderful thing. And I will tell you, though, in the very beginning, I was nervous. It's nerve-wracking to let yourself be, put yourself out there with the students. So that's one thing that that Faculty Institute is really good for. You get to try these real talks with your colleagues, and that was a little nerve-wracking too, for sure. But it was great to be able to do that. And I'll tell you, in that pedagogy in our cohort, I learned more about people than I had ever known. I mean, we've worked for these people for years, and we still get together and we still talk about stuff. And it takes time to develop these things. It's a working deal, but that's why I stick with you during that Faculty Institute, to make sure that you are still feeling supported as you move and design and create these things. So that was really exciting. And just to end here, to talk a little bit about the alternative lessons and the effects on the instructors. I've got a few instructors here at Amarillo College that really get into this and do stuff. One of them, Mr. Swartzlosey, this is amazing. He said that he accidentally kept his students through lunch and nobody noticed. And I'm like, there's no way I could do that. If you can make it through and your students don't notice that they need to go eat, I think you're doing an awesome job. Mr. Morella said that the pedagogy helps bridge the gap of knowledge between the student and instructor. So that speaks to that connection that you have, that engagement with your students when you're teaching them. So much better than just that I'm droning on to a classroom of glazed-faced people. And then last but not least, Mr. Favor, he's one of our government teachers, fantastic teacher here at Amarillo College. He said that the real talks emphasize the importance of common understandings and making permissible the academic use of personal understanding. So really bringing that information on a personal level, something that's important to you. And I was so excited to get that from those guys. They were very kind, and I'm glad I got to work with them. So with that, I'm not sure. I feel like it went by really fast, but I'd like to thank you so much for allowing me to come talk to you. Please, I'll open for any questions. And then also, in case you don't want to ask a question out loud or you want extra information later, I have a QR code to a Google form. You can use your phone. Go ahead and jump on there. Use your camera if you have an iPhone. This is something I do for my students too, if they are nervous about asking questions. And then you can put in there things that you would like to ask, or if you want me to contact you with other information, that'd be awesome. And now I'll go ahead and turn this back over. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Price. We appreciate it. Some great information. Anyone have any questions? I'm going to keep the room open just for a little second, just in case you have a question or any comments. Please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to help you out here and answer those questions. Again, thank you, Dr. Price, for sharing your personal experience. There is a comment, Dr. Price, it is because of human beings like you that I do the work I do. Thank you for being you. Great work. Awesome
Yeah,
comment.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yes. There was also another comment in here that I read that I thought was very uh, heartfelt. The same thing. I think everybody's just feeling your heart here. Thank you for your transparency and sincerity. Another person said that as well. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I sure enjoyed, and hopefully I'll be able to talk to you guys in the future about something. Please feel free to contact me anytime. You can put your contact information in the Google form there. Also, you can get my contact information. Please feel free to contact me anytime. I'd love to talk to you.
Okay. And again, this webinar is being recorded and I will send it out. It says here, I like how you explain how you approach students in the beginning and allowed them to learn about each other. So that was great. So you did get that comment as well.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all of your feedback very much.
Okay, I do have a short survey at the end. If you wouldn't mind taking that survey, we will greatly appreciate it. I will give you back 4 minutes of your time. If you do have questions, you can contact me or your institutional support consultant if you are part of Project Success, and we definitely will get back with you. Thank you so much and have a great evening.